Welcome to Central News, I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, Tauranga is one of the top e-towns in the country where businesses use the web to connect customers in the inaugural Google e-Towns Awards. Tauranga joins Auckland City, Nelson, Queenstown and Wellington City as the regional winners in the Google Awards, with the overall national winner to be announced in Wellington in May. Tauranga Mayor Stuart Crosby says he is delighted that the numerous web-savvy local enterprises are being recognised by Google. Secondary school principals, teachers, students, parents and local businesses and community leaders gathered in Tauranga to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Priority One's Industry and Schools Education Partnership Program. Priority One is the economic development organisation covering Tauranga and the Western Bay of Plenty. Known as InStep, the program harnesses the energy and expertise from local businesses to inspire secondary school students to make informed career choices. InStep's goal is to see school communities fully understand future school needs relevant to the community's economic growth and prosperity, and have a business community that is confident that secondary schools are preparing students with the skills they need now and into the future. The search is on for the 2013 Field Days Rural Bachelor of the Year. If you know a good single Kiwi bloke that can drive a digger, reverse a trailer, chainsaw a tree, and then rustle up a roast dinner, then he's perfect for Field Days Rural Bachelor of the Year. Entries for the competition are now open, and Field Days is on the lookout for hard-working rural blokes to represent the farming community. In keeping with Field Days' global theme this year, they are going trans-Tasman, and as well as 6 good Kiwi blokes, they will be searching for 2 Australians to join the competition. Now for our region's weather. Friday for you, Hamilton, showers turning into rain for a time and winds mainly light. Your expected high is 20 and an overnight low of 10. Tauranga, your Friday's rain will be developing into some heavy falls and the winds are mainly light. Your expected high is 21 and an overnight low of 14. Just ahead, dawn services in Hamilton. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. Anzac Day is on next week and tomorrow is Poppy Appeal. Amy caught up with the Hamilton RSA to find out where dawn services are around the city.
The parade leaves Hood Street at 5:30, arrives at the Cenotaph about 6 o'clock, and the service starts at 6 a.m.
So what is the significance of the dawn service? Well,
the dawn service is about, in military terms, all major attacks and wars were done at the break of dawn, which they call stand to dawn, and then the battle began with the guns firing first, and then the infantry follows up to do the rest of it. So it's the sort of part about the dawn service relates to the First World War on the 25th of April 1915, for New Zealand actually joined the war, and that's where it came from.
How many young men did we lose on that day in 1915?
From books I've read, so it may not be true, some people might dispute it, there was between 100 and 127 New Zealand died on that one day, in the first 24 hours. And the casualties, well, there was no list of how many of them.
Now, it's Poppy Appeal Day on the 19th, so what is the significance of the red poppy?
The story goes that a battle was held at the Flanders Fields and during the First World War. Many young soldiers died on these slushy fields, and amongst that, these poppies grew in the autumn. And that slushy stuff, they died amongst the poppies that were already growing in the autumn. And it came from that era that New Zealand ladies in 1916 actually started making poppies for Anzac Day. The Anzac Day in 1916, of course, was the 30th of April, and it was changed after that.
And what do these funds raised go towards?
They go to old retired soldiers and families, the parents and families. And we get about 40,000 a year. We spend at least 30,000 at least a year on these old people. Some can't afford to pay, like they have a time payment, and they're left behind, and we've paid their time payments for them. And other things, you know, that we can have, like wood. In the old days, they used to supply wood to the widows and it was a big deal.
So what else does the RSA do for retired soldiers?
We call them veterans now, that's the modern term, and we help them with anything they can't afford out of their ordinary pensions or what they've got left of their life savings. So we've bought wheelchairs, mobile scooters for them. We buy it, we lend it to them until they can't use it again, and then we bring them back here and redo it to the next group. Glasses, teeth, we help for teeth, hearing aids. So we do a lot. See, they can get so much money from like other areas, but they can't pay the rest, so we help with that area. And we spend a lot of money on these old veterans, which they're entitled to.
Yeah, definitely.
And their families, of course, their wives and their children, if need be.
How many retired soldiers do we have left in New Zealand who fought in World War II? Now,
this is a rough estimate. At the last RSA conference, I think they said between 20,000 and 30,000. That could be a big difference, I don't know. But you don't count them. They only come as a count because they join RSAs. There's a lot that don't, so it's not a true count. Yeah.
Now, Anzac Day isn't just about honouring those who fought in World War I and II. Who else is it about honouring?
It's about all servicemen and their wives and families who stayed home while they were overseas fighting for our country. And they come under the same category as being honoured by us. It's the families of those servicemen. And the wars after the Second World War. There's like Korea, Malaya, Vietnam, and many more, and still going to Afghanistan now, or just ended for us. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of servicemen out there in the long term.
Now, how important is it that we pay tribute and remember those who paid with their lives?
I'd say it's very important to the families that come to the dawn services and the civic service. And it's a sad thing, you hear these old men sitting in the darkness at the dawn service and they're snivelling, and I'm sure they've got a tear in their eye, and it's very sad, you can hear it, you know. There's a quiet moment when you're all standing still. And then there's the families that have to look after those people now. You know, it means a lot. To me personally, you know, I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and I've learnt a lot, but I've enjoyed a lot too, yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about your role within the RSA?
Busy. No, busy this time of the year, but yeah, I go to rest home visiting, hospitals occasionally. Not now too much because I cannot walk a long way. But hospital rest homes, I go to a guy in a place called Brian Lynn Rest Home. He's 103, went to the Second World War. 103 years old, he's still got his wits about it. That makes you feel good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes me feel young.
And tell me, how can people donate?
You do it through banks, service clubs, service stations, and many shops around the Hamilton area have our stationery boxes. So you just go to the counter wherever you are, they'll have one there somewhere, and just make your donation and they'll give you a poppy.
Visit rsa.org.nz to find out where the nearest dawn service is to you. Just to hear physical education and health in our schools. One Waikato University student has recently researched the ways of helping all children enjoy health and physical education, no matter what their background, needs and interests. Kirsten Petrie tells us more.
What was that pivotal moment in the study?
I think for teachers, and I don't really like to talk on their behalf, but I'm going to, one of the pivotal moments was when they heard their own students talking about what it was to be healthy and unhealthy. And they did a range of activities where students drew or wrote about phrases that for them depicted what a healthy person was and what a healthy person wasn't. So there's things like, if you're healthy, clearly you're skinny, you eat fruit and vegetables and you drink lots of water. Well, if you're unhealthy, you eat lots of junk food, you're fat and you spend too much time watching TV. And it was disturbing when we heard students as young as year 3, so 7-year-olds talking about eating enough protein during the day, or have they had enough carbohydrates. And for the teachers hearing this in particular, this triggered them to go, this is not the way we want young people to view themselves or others, and to think about their bodies and others' bodies in less judgmental and in less judgmental ways, where they weren't worried about what they looked like in relation to other people. And it really triggered them to start thinking about how do we get our kids to see the world differently, see the world and each other as all acceptable regardless of the shape of our silhouette, and that became a trigger point for doing a whole lot of things differently.
And I guess that could potentially lead to self-esteem issues.
So one of the teachers, Shane, has talked about doing a research project around are our practices in health and PE making kids sicker? You know, we might hear people talk about obesity issues, but we would worry that in 15 years' time we're going to have, or 5 years' time, have real mental health issues. And we already see that coming through with young men and young women who have real body image issues. And we don't think a lot of the health imperatives and initiatives that are in schools that are done with good intent actually necessarily address some of the broader social and personal issues that these things bring up.
Have you seen any changes in the students' learning?
Yeah, it's been really nice, and the teachers talk about, and their principals talk about kids being much more accepting of each other and making comments about, well, you don't have to be blonde, or we're all different. And I think of, again, some of these 7-year-olds talking about, we all look different, and that's great, because if we all look the same, it'd be boring. Or we might look the same on the outside if we're twins, but we're different on the inside, because we all have special abilities and we're all unique. And to hear kids value themselves and value the difference in others is a really positive first step, but it's not that easy because they still are swamped by media messages that say certain ways of being and looking and certain ways of certain body shapes are more valued than others. And so it's not a quick fix. There's no one recipe that's going to solve this. It's different things for different students in different contexts.
So what challenges did you face throughout the process?
I think one of the biggest challenges for us was trying to battle some of that media stuff that, you know, we're talking about children who are exposed to programs like The Biggest Loser on a regular basis, and messages from doctors and parents and siblings that say, you know, if you're fat, you're never going to get married. And that's what one of the Year 5 students said to us. And when you hear a 8, 9-year-old say that, you go, what does this mean for how this young person feels about themselves? So it was really challenging to try and do things in ways that would support them to question the messages they were getting and do that while they're still being bombarded with those messages. And of course, our bodies are all personal, so we as teachers are dealing with those things, and we have to think about what messages we give to the students along the way. So there's those sort of challenges. And there is the challenge of going, we don't know how to do this. Like, there's nothing out there, there's no fixed answer, there's no silver bullet to this. It's just about trial and error. So we're really challenged to live with not knowing how to do it and be willing to take risks. So yeah, we've explored and played, and there's things we haven't done perfectly, but along the way we've seen real benefits for kids in terms of how they feel about themselves and how they relate to others.
And do you think that the education sector could ever actually outweigh the media message?
Oh, I don't think it's easy. I think it's a real struggle because the media message is really dominant. We have programs going to schools all over the country that send messages about what is good food and what is bad food, because food is not enjoyable any longer, it's either good or bad. We have messages about the right ways to be physically active. So those sort of things are constantly playing out in the messages children get. And, you know, we've seen colleagues, and Lizette has students who are talking to children in early childhood centres who already know what's good food and what's bad food. So we're starting to create a society where food is not for joy and pleasure and socialising. Food is about getting energy in and energy out. And, you know, is that the message we want to do? And it doesn't fit with our curriculum where we're talking about holistic notions of well-being. So it's always going to be a challenge.
How do we find it? That's a difficult one, isn't it? Because how do you find that balance between health and portraying good self-esteem?
I think we can always, like, you know, I believe in eating well, but what does that mean? Because it's actually a social issue as well, because lots of the message around what is good food is white, middle-class food. And so it's not just about food choices, it's about socioeconomics, it's about family context, traditions. So I come from a different country and this is a food of my family practice, but it's not the right food to eat in this society. So, you know, we're always going to struggle with those things, and it's just the medical message often dominates the education message, and I guess we're worried that, and we're always being challenged, that the education voice is lost and the health message is the dominant message we're seeing in these practices currently.
What were your final recommendations after the study?
It takes time. It's a complex, the whole health, physical education space is a complex space, and teachers need time to think, dither, make sense of what they could do differently. At the end of the day, the message is the children should be at the centre of that, and the children in the broadest sense of that word, not just as we academic number crunchers, children that we want, and not just as a particular body shape, that all children should be valued and included in the planning and ways we think about teaching and learning.
Just ahead, autism awareness. If you have just joined us, you are on TV Central with Central News. Many New Zealanders have an autism spectrum disorder, and creating awareness and understanding about the disorder is important. I spoke with the Bay of Plenty Field Officer for Autism New Zealand.
What is Autism Awareness Month?
It's a time when we can just highlight the concerns and the awareness around autism spectrum disorder, and the people, their family, whānau, support workers, anybody that's working with those people.
Why is it important to have awareness around autism?
Well, for all those reasons probably, in that we can highlight the issues that are out there, that we can have the general public more aware of people with autism and the negative and positive effects that are having the world is having on them. So yeah, it's just about awareness.
What is autism spectrum disorder?
Autism spectrum disorder is a term given to a family of autistic conditions or autism conditions. So it can, and it does and may include Asperger's syndrome, dyspraxia, dyslexia, PDD, NOS, which is developmental delays, and so it's a term to cover that family of disorders.
What is Autism New Zealand Incorporated's aim?
The aim is to, our aim is to give support, awareness to people living with autism spectrum disorder, their family, whānau, and any support workers and anybody working with them. So we are there as a support service to advocate, to educate, and to support in whichever way people will require it.
What is Asperger's syndrome, and how does that actually differ to autism?
Asperger's syndrome is a type of autism, and really, to make it very, very simple, it's really about the degree of disability. So Asperger's, if we're going to look at it that simply, is probably could be classified as less disabling in many ways. Although in saying that, people with Asperger's syndrome generally have average to above average intelligence, can cope perfectly well with academics, but they still struggle with social communication, imagination and sensory and all the other issues that people with autism per se suffer from.
What are the statistics of people who have an autism spectrum disorder in New Zealand?
It's changing all the time. They talk about 40,000 people in New Zealand. It was 1 to 100 at one stage. But then it was talking about 1 to 80. And just last week, statistics came out of the United States, which says there's 1 in 50 children in schools in the United States are affected with ASD. So there's no reason why we're not following those same statistics. So presumably we're looking at similar sort of numbers. And those are the people who are diagnosed. And there's a lot of people out there who have the traits who aren't diagnosed.
Is it known what causes this condition?
Not really. There's an amazing amount of research going on all the time worldwide, and they are getting closer to coming up with some ideas and some reasons around that. And the only thing that's really been scientifically sorted at this stage is that there is a genetic component. So that's one of the things that has been shown to be.
Is there any scientific evidence that there's actually a correlation between immunisation and autism?
No, is the short answer to that. Some families believe very strongly that their child has been affected by immunisation, but at this stage there is no scientific evidence around.
What are some of the features of autism spectrum disorder?
Generally, it's a developmental disability, neurological, and so what's affected mainly is communication. So that's can be language development, but it's also processing of language and processing of the whole way language is used, and that these children, young people, adults, because it is a lifelong condition, struggle with everyday life and everyday happenings. So we've got communication. We have socialisation as another aspect, which again they struggle very much in relationships, in understanding the social niceties in the world. And the other that's talked about a lot is imaginative play, and those three aspects are known as the triad of disabilities, but also very, very important for people on the spectrum are sensory issues. They tend to be very sensory issues are huge in all their senses. They can often be very heightened, and so those are the major things. Also, a lot of repetitive things going on for these people. Their special interests and repetitive things are also common.
How will people with this disorder struggle with social interaction?
It is an issue for them because they don't necessarily understand a lot of the social cues that come in front of them. So we have areas that they do struggle with, that they do have difficulty with. They don't necessarily read body language, they don't read facials, they don't understand sarcasm. They're very literal, obviously, often in what they hear and what they interpret. And many of our young people have difficulties with relationships. And that can start at a very early stage, that they have difficulty with relationships. And obviously this affects them in the workplace and in life in general. Obviously I'm generalising because the one big issue is that every one of our guys are really different.
That's it for today. We really want your involvement, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have your own news, including video and photos, go to our website and hit upload. I will be back tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.